nothing, boy. You're finished already. Look at me. Look at me. You know you're done. You are. Ali. Ali.
لا تقوم الساعة حتى يقاتل المسلمون اليهود فيقتلهم المسلمون ويختبئ اليهودي وراء الحجر والشجر فينادي الحجر والشجر قائلا يا مسلم يا عبد الله هذا يهودي خلفي تعالى فاقتل إن لم تقتل فإنه من شجر اليهود.
And you have no idea how much I hope Allah is going to curse you to the rest of your life.
You are. Ali. Ali.
I think the moral issues.
Television evangelist Jimmy Swagwart made a tearful confession before his congregation on February 21st, 1988, of unspecified sin.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
He stepped down from his pulpit. It was reported that Swagwart had paid a New Orleans prostitute to pose in the nude. Swagwart had been accused of setting off the sex scandal which led to the defrocking of televangelist rival Jim Bakker. Bakker and a top aide were indicted on 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy. Bakker had resigned his ministry after admitting to a sexual encounter with a church secretary.
I want to get back to preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and loving and caring for people. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Jimmy Swagwart's scandal came complete with prostitution and a very tearful on-camera confession.
To my fellow television ministers and evangelists, please forgive me for sinning against you. I have sinned against you, my Lord. And I would ask that your precious blood would wash and cleanse every stain.
Background here is that Jimmy Swagwart had been going after other televangelists like Jim Bakker for marital infidelity for years. When the tables were turned in 1988, he was forced to admit that he himself had availed himself of the services of a prostitute. So he confessed with many tears. As you saw, he stepped down from his ministry for 3 months. Then, despite having been defrocked by the Assemblies of God, he went back as an ordained minister of his own Jimmy Swagwart Ministries. Then, 3 years later, he was busted with another prostitute in his car, at which point he told his congregation that his proclivities were, and I quote, none of your business. So Jimmy Swagwart, the hooker, cry and repent about the hooker, hooker again guy. Not to be confused with Jim Bakker, the secretary stripping fraud prison guy.
Islam allows 4 wives. He just corrected me, he said up to 4. I said, well, Mr. Deedat, Christianity only allows us one, so I had to get the best on the first shot.
So he said, but you see, Christianity allows us only one, and I have to choose the best. Get the tape, get the tape. He said, I have to choose the best. And you know, the best was not good enough. Look, all these tele-evangelists, all one by one, they're all falling. Reverend Marvin Gorman, an evangelist, you know, tele-evangelist, he appears on television, tantalizing millions. He was caught with a prostitute. Jim Becker, with Jessica Hans, another prostitute. Jimmy Swagwart, average of 2 trips to the prostitute for his satisfaction. I said, you laugh at us? You are a fool. I said, the laugh is on you. You Americans, you have a problem. You Britisher, you have a problem. You French, you have a problem. You Germans, you have a problem. And to these, there are no solutions in your book. No solution. Islam gives an answer to your problem.
He's a prominent religious evangelist known around the world for his controversial writings about Islam and the Quran.
Tonight, he is in custody in Baldwin County, charged with trying to burn down a condominium high-rise in Daphne. He says he is from the hometown of Jesus and claims to have preached the gospel in 82 different countries. Tonight, Dr. Anis Shorrosh is accused of putting dozens of his Daphne neighbors in danger.
By the Spirit of God. Who was his father? My friends.
He is a Christian evangelist who has infuriated Muslims worldwide by questioning the Quran. Anis Shorrosh claims fanatic Muslims tried to kill him on 3 different occasions. Last night, here at the Loma Alta condominiums in Daphne, Shorrosh was arrested and is facing charges of attempted arson.
Well, right now we're treating it his intent was to burn down Loma Alta Towers. You know, he started a fire in the basement of Loma Alta Towers.
You live in a high-rise, and there's always a concern about some sort of disaster happening.
Police say Shorrosh was trying to torch the building in which he lives. There may, however, be a different motive. Well, that is the trash bin that police say Shorrosh started on fire in the garage here at the Loma Alta condominiums late last night. NBC 15 News has found out that inside that trash bin is a box full of tax documents, apparently from Shorrosh's Evangelical Association. Police would not comment on the tax records found inside that burned trash bin.
Potentially, we could be looking at several, death investigations or several murder investigations. We could have several people that wouldn't be with us today.
Now, police say Shorrosh is also facing charges of criminal mischief for dismantling a security system at the Loma Alta condos last week. He is in jail in Baldwin County tonight.
Our top story at 10 o'clock, surveillance tapes may hold clues in a shocking arrest.
He has stirred controversy worldwide. He even claims radical Muslims have tried to kill him. Now, well-known evangelist Anis Shorrosh is accused of trying to burn down a high-rise condominium in Daphne. Authorities tell NBC 15 News they are now reviewing surveillance tapes recorded last night at the Loma Alta condos. Dozens of families live there, including Shorrosh's. Police say these are people whose lives could have been lost. NBC 15's Jenna Susko joins us live from that condominium tower in Daphne. And Jenna, some folks who live there are just finding out about the fire.
Yeah, they sure are, Greg. On their drive home, when they arrived here, we spoke to them, and many were shocked, stunned, those who know Dr. Shorrosh and his wife, to hear that something like this would happen. Now, the big question on everyone's minds is why? Why would someone want to burn down dozens of homes, including his own? Well, that's a mystery investigators are working to solve.
He's preached before thousands, served as an evangelist in the Middle East, even authored a book about the attacks on America.
Now, Dr. Anish Shorrosh is in jail, charged with attempted arson after police say he tried to burn down a place hundreds in Daphne call home.
Potentially, we could be looking at several, death investigations or several murder investigations. We could have several people that wouldn't be with us today.
Investigators say around 10 o'clock last night, while many were sleeping, Shorrosh went down to the storage room on the first floor and set the recycling bin on fire.
You live in a high-rise, and there's always a concern about some sort of disaster happening.
Just happened to see the red lights flashing on the blinds and looked out the blinds to see what was going on. I saw a fire truck sitting across the street and what looked like paramedics.
Neighbors had no idea what was happening, but investigators say it was a calculated move. They say earlier Shorrosh had tampered with the security system.
But in a big fire if he'd have got it going. It's right across the street.
Now, investigators tell me that a board member heard the alarms last night and discovered the fire. He was able to quickly extinguish it, so thankfully nobody was hurt and that fire did not spread beyond that storage room. Reporting live in Baldwin County, Jenna Sesko, NBC 15 News.
Jenna, thank you. Now, NBC 15 News has learned that a box containing tax records from Shorrosh's Evangelistic Association were in that recycling bin police say he set on fire. Police would not comment on those records.
The Independence mayor is under fire for the speaker he asked to the annual mayor's prayer breakfast tomorrow. Critics say the speaker will be given a pulpit to preach hate. Amy Hawley has that story.
Kamal Saleem, a well-known self-proclaimed ex-terrorist who once followed the Muslim faith, converted to Christianity years ago. The mayor says Saleem will bring a story of redemption to Independence tomorrow, but critics claim it's really a story that's fabricated.
Mayor Don Reimel says he's going to say a prayer before tomorrow's traditional prayer breakfast. Several groups, an anti-defamation civil rights group, interfaith groups, and individuals have all asked him to reconsider his keynote speaker and plan to protest his choice. So far, none of this has changed his mind.
What I'm hoping is that when they hear his message, their fears will be dissolved.
Kamal Saleem has been publicly speaking of his religious conversion for 10 years. He tells groups he was raised to hate Christians and Jews, but after a near-fatal car accident, he became a devout Christian. The mayor has heard from supporters from all over the world saying his message is a powerful one.
All I want is his testimony. If he has a story to tell about other things to do with the Islamic religion, that's a story for another place and another time.
This Independence man believes differently. He says the man fabricated his story for money and preaches an anti-Muslim message.
Be an Islamophobe for the most part. Person who bashes Islam, bashes Muslims in general with a broad brush.
This Muslim civil rights group called CARE says he's also even fabricated his own name. Saleem has spoken to universities, churches, and military academies. Still, critics here believe it's less a message about finding Christ and more about preaching that the world will soon see a radical Islam invasion.
Now, keep in mind, none of the people we talked to has ever talked to Saleem or heard him in person. So the question still remains. Is it a Christian message that's being labeled as hate speech by people who don't believe the same way as Saleem does? Or is it a man who uses the Christian message as a veil for an anti-Muslim agenda? 600 people will decide tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at the Community of Christ Auditorium. Amy Hawley, NBC Action News.
There's a guy named Kamal Saleem, and he gives speeches to right-wing groups and government groups, etc., claiming that he is an ex-terrorist. But thank God he's found the way, he's found the light, and he goes and speaks to these groups, like the Values Voter Summit that just happened. He spoke there. Here, let me give you a sample of what he said. Here, let's go to clip one.
My grandfather came from the Ottoman Empire when it fell in 1924 as a general. He earned his scars by the sword of Islam. And when he had my mom, I was born to a Muslim mother who is zealot. I was trained, and she told me from my childhood, my son, you will die for the sake of Allah. And when you kill Jews and Christians, Allah will celebrate your glory and your hands will light up before the throne of Allah. I was a young lad. I dreamt about killing Jews and Christians. This is my dream as a child.
That is a powerful story. And it got the crowd revved up. They were, look at this ex-terrorist. You see that? We knew it. We knew all these Muslims were trained at birth to kill Christians and Jews. In fact, he also said, I came to destroy this country as a terrorist. Funny that the FBI hasn't talked to him. But anyway, he's had speaking engagements in not just the Values Voter Summit, but at the state capitals throughout the country, at the Air Force Academy, and at colleges and churches all across the country. And he has an amazing tale to tell. Do you know that he says he's worked for Yasser Arafat, the PLO, Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan? And by the way, as you're about to see here in clip number 2, he was also indoctrinated by the Muslim Brotherhood.
I was recruited in the mosque at young age, as many children start attending the mosque in the neighborhood, by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood came to history in 1928. I was indoctrinated by them in the mosque. That was my college study. We were taught how to infiltrate civilization and become part of nations and change the nations from inside. How to marry your daughters and obtain the citizenship. How to join your military and become member of your military so we can get the citizenship. How to become chaplain and spy on this nation and give it to our brotherhood. And how to become part of this world and come across the borders to infiltrate your very civilization today. This is in a nutshell.
So, Kansas City Star sees this, and they're like, wait, let me get this right. Muslim Brotherhood, Arafat, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, is there anybody you didn't mention? And they called him, quote, the Forrest Gump of the Middle East. So now this guy continues with his amazing tales. In fact, he's got one that involves curious sounds and a sad story about a young man that got killed and how proud his mom was that he was killed. Because, you know, it's all Muslims. It's in their culture. That's the story he's really trying to bring to these right-wing voters. Watch.
My first master was Yasser Arafat. My first mission was very, very good. You see, the Jews didn't think that children can do such a thing. We took advantage of them. The second journey, I was 8, I was a recruiter. I recruited my next door neighbor, Muhammad. And I told his mom, I'll bring him back home alive. I made a promise. But that day they were waiting for us. This is when the blood of children and blood of lamb was mixed together as we're trying to rendezvous with the shepherd so they can put these belts on the belly of the sheep and take them inside Israel to give them to Fidaiyin, which is the martyrs. That day, they shot us with everything. Muhammad took shrapnel through his esophagus and he fell down to the ground. I carried him and I'm crying, how I'm going to tell his mom? And I was crying, Mama. That day, Muhammad went a different place. You see, when his mom talked to me, she said, where is Muhammad? You promised he'll be back. I said, he is with Allah. He's celebrating in the host of heaven. Now you can go to paradise without judgment because he became a forgiven like a Messiah to you. And I said, now he's being wed by Allah with 72 versions, and with every version he has 72 other versions. Muhammad is in good place, Fatima. She put her hand to her lips and shouted with a shout of wedding feast. La, 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 la. She celebrated her son wedding into the heavens.
This guy is a colorful character, man. And he's giving them the show that they want. Oh, yeah, Muslims with their weird little calls and stuff. And yeah, they were so ecstatic when their kid died. By the way, this guy also sounds like Father Sarducci from Saturday Night Live. And then you need 2 or 3 miracles. And I tell her, your son has 72 virgins. But why would a mom care about that? Okay, so if you notice, he said in his second mission, he was 8 years old. According to his accounts, in his first mission when he was running the guns on the sheeps, I'm not kidding, that's what he says, he was 7 years old. Who would be so colossally stupid as to believe this? Well, of course, not the authorities. In 2007, for example, in Chino Hills, California, he said that Muslim agents had broken into his Holiday Inn and ransacked the place. Oh, the Muslim Brotherhood's on his tail. When cops were asked about it, quote, local law enforcement, however, has no record of any such incident. Yeah. Fail. And then in 2007, again, he's speaking at Michigan's Calvin College. Another professor, Doug Howard, professor of Middle Eastern history, notices that he's saying really weird things. And in the middle of his speech, he says that he was a descendant of, quote, the Grand Wazir of Islam. Here's the only problem. There is no such thing. That's an awesome fail. He just made it up. He's like, it sounds kind of like wizard, you know? And other things. Oh, la, 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 la. The Grand Wazir of Islam. And Doug Howard's like, wait a minute, there's no such thing. What the hell's going on here? This guy is unreal. So, in fact, literally, it turns out his real name is Kodor Shami. That Kalam name, he just made it up. It's Kodor Shami. And in fact, who did he work for 10 years before he came out as an ex-terrorist? Pat Robertson's Christian Broadcasting Network and James Dobson's Focus on the Family. Gee, I wonder where he got all these ideas. Can't quite tell. Come on, Kamal. Even though that's not actually his name. All right. Now, he says that he speaks at the FBI all the time, and the FBI is communicating because people say, hey, wait a minute, my God, if you were this mastermind terrorist, why isn't the FBI talking to you? Well, he said, oh, yeah, all the time. So they asked FBI spokesperson Kathleen Wright. She said, quote, no information that Kamal Saleem has spoken at an FBI-sponsored event, cannot say definitively whether the Bureau had ever been in contact with him. And I love this line by Dawood Wali. He's the, one of the guys from the Council on American Islamic Relations. Obviously, they realized that this guy's a scam artist. He said, quote, the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security don't let people who are terrorists into the country and not detain them just because they claim they got the Holy Ghost.